Okay, so if everybody's ready, please just raise your hands or send me thumbs up so that we can get started. Can you hear me? Naya, are you there? Radwa, Tasneem?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so in this test, and especially in the first passage, mashallah, you all did a great job, okay? And in this passage, we have only one question that we need to discuss, and this is question number 6, okay? Cecilia, recount Rafa's joke, which is in lines 61 through 64, primarily in order to what? So first of all, of course, we need to ask ourselves, what type of question is this, right? And since the question says primarily in order to, who can tell me what question is this?
Function.
Yes, thank you, Muhammad. So it's a function question. And they give us the lines, but they tell us why is the information in those lines mentioned in the passage. So here we have Rafa's joke. So as usual, when we have a function question, we cannot just start from those lines. We can start from the beginning of the paragraph. We try to understand what the context is about. So here is the thing. I have 2 boys, she said. Both of them were born there. Enrique, my oldest, is away at college on a soccer scholarship. And there is Mayor, who you met. He's nothing at all like his brother. And that's, the introduction of the joke. Because here, Rafa thinks we might have taken the wrong baby home from the hospital. She forced a smile. Just a joke, of course. So the key is in this information. Before she told the joke, she just said, he's nothing at all like his brother. And then she says that her husband thinks that they might have taken the wrong baby home from the hospital. So if we connect, of course, the joke to the previous sentence, what is she trying to do here? What is the purpose of mentioning the joke? That's the question.
Kids are different.
Yes, exactly. Because she said that they are nothing, at all like each other. So the answer is C, to stress, to emphasize how different her sons are. And I just got the answer from the previous sentence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so for the first passage, that's it. For all the other questions, many questions you all got the right answers. And for some other questions, maybe one person didn't get the right answer. So again, basically, we have nothing wrong in passage 1. We have just this question number 6, and we have just done it together. Now we can move to the second passage. And here they're saying, extremist politics, debating the nuts and bolts. And remember, from here we know now just what the topic. It's about politics. And we said, if the information in the blurb doesn't actually provide you with the context that you need to have in order to understand what the passage is about, usually the first paragraph is very short, okay? And that's why you can read it instead of the blurb. So let's see what they're talking about here. So they are saying that voters need to understand the prosaic details of complex policies. Most have staked out positions on these issues. But, and remember, we said whenever we have but, it's an important piece of information, we pay attention to it. They are not often reasoned positions, which take hard intellectual work. Most citizens opt instead. So instead of, trying to understand why they are taking these positions of some policies, they instead just opt for, so they tend to have simplistic explanations, assuming how. The most important word here is wrongly. So assuming wrongly that they comprehend the nuances of issues. So we highlighted the keywords here. Okay, so they need to understand the details, but they often, take not reasoned positions. They tend to simplistic explanations, and they assume wrongly that they understand the details of the issues. Okay, so that's what the passage is about. And of course, after that, we're going to have maybe a study, an experiment, and so on. Now, actually, we have question number 11, which is the main idea. Okay, so if you really got the point raised in the first paragraph, and of course, you're going to complete reading the passage, and here they're asking us about the central idea. Okay, what is this passage about? What is the main idea of the passage? That's what we read in passage or paragraph 1. It's about the process of describing an issue in detail and how it can make people more moderate in their views about the issue. Because when you take a position, but you have no reasons, or you don't understand the details of your position, then what's going to happen? Extremist politics. But when you describe, an issue in detail, be able to understand your view and be moderate about it. So the answer is B. Of course, this is a general question, and it requires your reading of the whole thing, getting the big picture. But remember, the main idea is usually stated in the first paragraph, and then we can just proceed with details that support that main idea. So for question number 11, again, the answer is B.
Why can't we choose C?
Most people are not truly interested in understanding complex ideas. Again, when you read the whole issue, it's not about the interest, because remember, in every option you have a keyword. And the most important here is that not truly interested. Again, explore the passage, go through the paragraphs. You'll see that maybe it's a specific detail mentioned in the passage, but it cannot be the central idea. Okay, we said many times when you are asked a general question, they give you an option that's mentioned in the passage and it's correct. But just ask yourself, does that summarize the whole point of the passage? That's the point.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. And of course, then when we answer other questions, we're going to through other paragraphs, and I'm going to show you how the topic is developed and how everything is going around the idea that if you really understand the details of a policy, and if you have clear explanations and reasons for your own point of view, then that's going to make you more moderate instead of being, an extremist. For question number 12, actually here, again, we have no problem with question number 12, but I can tell you quickly that the answer here is D. It's about, again, the shift of focus. So we said that here, the answer is D, which says we started with an observation of a trend, and then we have an analysis of its causes, and then at the end, we have a proposal for a research study to validate the analysis. That's for question, B. Sorry, that's my mistake. So for 12, the answer is B, okay? An introduction of a phenomenon, a description of experiments, and then a recommendation based on the results of those experiments. Now we can move to question number 13, which is about the word illusion in line 9. Okay, so let's go there. So we have already read the first paragraph. Let's start from the beginning of the second paragraph. Psychological scientists have a name for this easy, automatic, simplistic thinking: the illusion of explanatory depth. And of course, you need to be patient and read a little bit more to see what they mean by this, because this is the name of this way of thinking. But what do they mean by illusion of explanatory depth? We're going to read the following sentence. Hopefully, they're going to give us a clue to understand what this word means. Okay? All right. So we strongly believe that we understand complex matters when in fact we are clueless. You see, the relationship of ideas here in this sentence is contrast. What do we believe? We believe that we really understand the issue, but in fact, we are clueless. We have no clue. And these false and extreme beliefs shape our preferences. So now you can think about it like this. The illusion is itself, it's the false and extreme beliefs, isn't it? And these beliefs that are false and extreme, they shape our preferences, judgments, and actions. And of course, that will be including our votes. So now I have in mind is that the illusion is about having no clue. We think we understand the issue, but we actually don't. And then we have just false beliefs. Now I believe that this is context for us, of course, to answer the question. So when we say illusion here, are we talking about a dream? Yes or no?
No.
It's not a dream. Is it a phantom? Is it a ghost? Again, it's not. So now it's either A, misconception, and then we have charade. But let me ask you about A, misconception. Miss, what does that mean when we add this prefix before any word, at the beginning of any word? What does it mean?
Negative.
Yeah. Also, he mentioned wrong, false. And conception, what does it mean? Conception on its own. It means view, idea, believe, right? So now, didn't we have in the passage something that's called false beliefs? That explains the meaning of illusion. And now you think about misconception, it means a false view, a false idea, a false belief. So that's the answer, it is A. So don't worry, guys. You always have enough clues in the context that will help you and lead you to the right answer. It's just the matter of analysis and making connections between, ideas or the words that you have in the passage. But of course, it's not charade, okay?
What does the C mean?
Charade, it has different meanings, okay? One of the meanings, for example, it means that it's an absurd, ridiculous pretense. Sometimes we have the game of charade, when I act out something and you try to guess what it is. So it can be mockery, it can be parody, it can be pretense, and so on. But again, go back to the context and you will have the explanation of the word itself, which is, and that's what we have in misconception. Doesn't that make sense, guys? Muhammad, Habibi ya Muhammad, please open up your camera, man. When I see you, I feel happy and optimistic. Don't you want me to be happy and optimistic? Yeah, look, everything is fine. We can just proceed with that. Okay. And remember, guys, whenever we are discussing a question, there is any point that you have a question about, you don't really understand, or it's not clear enough, immediately just open up your microphone and go ahead, because now is the real chance to learn from your mistakes, to get the right answers, to know how the exam works, and so on. For question number 14, we have no problem, actually. And of course, the answer is C for question number 14. Okay, shape here simply means influence. Now we can move to question number 15. For question number 15, again, it's about the purpose of the fourth paragraph, which is in lines 26 through 42. And only two people got this question wrong, and they have the same answer. So let's go there quickly. We can read those lines here. Look, of course, it depends on, again, understanding of how the passage is structured, right? And First of all, they told us about the issue itself, the phenomenon, and then they gave us the term, which is called the illusion of explanatory depth. And then we have some considerations that led to what? That led to a series of lab experiments to test this idea. So what do you expect to have in this specific paragraph? They started by recruiting a group of volunteers in their 30s. We have Democrats, Republicans, and independents. What did they do with them? They asked them to state their positions on a variety of issues, from a national flat tax to a cap and trade system for carbon emissions. And the volunteers indicated how strongly they felt about each issue. Then the volunteers were instructed to write elaborate explanations of two issues. Okay, so first of all, they asked them about their points of view, and they indicated how strongly they felt about each issue. And now they are asked to write an elaborate description of two issues. If the issue was cap and trade, for example, they would first explain precisely what cap and trade means, how it is implemented, whom it benefits and whom it could hurt, the sources of carbon emissions, and so forth. They were not asked for value judgments about the policy or about the environment or business, only for a highly of the mechanic of the policy in action. So in this specific task, they didn't ask them to provide any evaluation. They just asked them, guys, okay, we already know how you feel about this issue. Please write you can say a detailed and elaborate description of this issue. So in this paragraph, after we said that actually they were thinking of having experiment, now the two options that you guys chose were A and C. So it's either to provide support for a theory or to outline the specifics of an experiment. So again, who can tell me, are we providing support for a theory here, or are we outlining the specifics, the process, the procedures of an experiment?
The process.
So the answer is C. Because the previous paragraph ended saying that now we will have a series of lab experiments to test this theory. And then they told us what the volunteers were supposed to do in this experiment. So they provide us with an outline of what's going to happen in the experiment. They didn't try to support the theory. Now, for 16 and 17, here we have something strange, which is, for question number 17, almost everybody got the right answer, which is the evidence. I think that means that we are using the trick we learned together, right? Is that correct? Because for the previous question, the last line we used was 42. 42, right? And for 17 again, more than 90% of you guys chose D, which is 44, 49. So this trick actually, again, is helpful. It helps us to understand where the evidence comes from. However, for question number 16, 50% of us got the right answer, and the other 50% got the wrong answer. So let's see what the answer for 16 is, okay? We already have our evidence, but let's see what the question is about. The passage implies, so remember, that's an inference question, which means don't expect the information to be stated directly. Okay, so the passage implies that when conducting his laboratory work, Fernbach would have been most surprised by which finding? So again, you don't expect here the passage to tell you that, Fernbach was actually surprised by this. But they are telling you, when he was conducting his laboratory work, what is the thing that you think would have been most surprising to Fernbach? And that's again in question number 16. Okay, so let's see here. We go to our evidence again, which is lines 44 to 49. And we try to make sense of what's going there. Remember, start from the beginning of the paragraph, get the big picture. Don't get yourself limited to specific lines, because the more context you get, the bigger the picture will be for you, and the more you will be able to get the right answer. Okay. Now, let's be honest. Most of us never do this. And here we have the question. What is this? What is this thing that most of us never do? If you go back a little bit, look. So we read that part before. So now I know that the thing that we never do is what? Is to write a highly detailed description of the mechanics of a policy, right? And then we have our evidence. Now, Fernbach's idea was that such an exercise would force many to realize just how little they really know. Focus on that. Okay, guys. His idea was that when we do such an action, when we do such an exercise, what would we realize? Many of us would realize actually how little we know about cap and trade, for example. And as a result, when we are confronted with our own ignorance, when we realize that we are actually ignorant, we don't know a lot of things about the issue we are discussing, what would happen? They would dampen, which means here weaken, their own enthusiasm. That's his point, right? So now what do you think that will be something surprising? Exactly the opposite. He believes that if we write a detailed description of a policy we are discussing, usually we will realize that we are ignorant. As a result, what would happen? Our enthusiasm to our position, to our point of view towards that policy will get a little bit weaker, and we will be more moderate, right? Let's now see the options, and please focus. We need to answer what is the most surprising. In this case, I'm going to choose something the opposite to what we read in the passage. Okay? Let's see here. So the thing that is most surprising is no link was found between the complexity of an issue and the strength of volunteers' positions.
No.
After volunteers were asked to analyze a complicated political issue, their understanding of it did not increase. When volunteers were asked to list their reasons for endorsing a particular policy, their wives were generally unaffected. Sorry, their views, not wives. Why did I say wives? Anyway, their views were generally unaffected by the exercise. Or when volunteers were asked questions about complex issues, those with the most extreme views were found to have the best overall understanding of them. So remember, it's like this. Do the explanation, realize how ignorant you are, and then moderate your view, your opinion. Okay? And here, that means the more extremist about the issue you are, the more, ignorant you're supposed to be. That's what's happening. Because the more you know, right, the less extremist you will be. So the answer here is like this. First of all, if we think about A, okay, that there's no link found between the complexity of the issue and the strength of the volunteers' positions. That has nothing to do here. Remember, these are the steps that you are following. First of all, explain. And then when you explain, you will realize how ignorant you are. And then that will lead to a change in your opinion, or at least it will be more moderate. And then B, after volunteers were asked to analyze complicated political issue, their understanding of it didn't increase. No, we said that we will realize how ignorant we are. And that will lead to a better understanding of the policy, and that will lead again to the change of our opinions. Okay? So B is wrong. And he will look, and here's the thing, he will not be surprised if they are trying to analyze and their understanding did not increase. Remember, we're looking for something that would surprise him. Okay? Focus on the word surprise, guys, which means you're going to choose the opposite of what's mentioned in the passage. So here you have a complicated issue. People were asked to analyze it, and then their understanding didn't increase. That's not surprising. It depends on the action that they do next. Nobody chose C, thankfully. And C is actually, yes, it's wrong. So now the answer for 16 is D. He would be actually surprised if he noticed that those people with the most extreme views had the best understanding. Because they're not ignorant, but they're still extremists. So that doesn't make sense according to his idea. He believes extremism comes from ignorance. But actually, what's surprising is that the people who are most extreme had the best understanding. Then the question, why is that? The idea is we get extremism out of ignorance, but these people are not ignorant, so why do they have the most extreme views? Does that make sense now? Is it clear? Sabah al-khair.
Yes.
Okay. Guys, where are you? Only Tasneem says yes, no, good, I have a question. The other people are enjoying the cinema. What are you doing, guys? Yahya, I didn't hear your voice today, man. I need your active participation. Okay?
Yes.
Agreed?
Yes.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Nuts and bolts mean the importance?
This is a figurative phrase. Okay, so it's not literal. Did you get what I mean?
Yes. The meaning of it means like it's the importance or the
No, simply
advance
it
and
means,
disadvance.
look, it means the basic practical details. When you know the nuts and bolts about something, it means you know all the specific details that you should have about a specific issue. Okay?
Yes.
So that's the figurative meaning of this phrase. Nuts and bolts means the basic practical details. Thank you, Radwa. Now we can move to questions 18 and 19. And here we have the same issue again. Question number 19, which is the evidence question, everybody got it right. There is no single mistake here. But for question number 18, it's not a big problem, but a few people got the answer wrong. But again, remember, since you are, using that trick and it really helps you, just put a little bit more thinking into the previous question to get the right answer as well. So let's see what question number 18 is about. Based on the passage. So again, that's an inference question. Another keyword that would tell us it's an inference question is would. And then we have most likely. Okay, so which action reduced political extremism among the citizenry? Okay, so it's not directly mentioned there, but we need to get this conclusion. Which action reduced political extremism among the citizenry? Again, if we go to question number 19, everybody chose D. So we have our evidence in lines 76 through 78, right? Let's go there. And for this question, I'd like Muhammad to help us here. Muhammad, if you please just help us by reading these lines and tell us how we can get the right answer for which action, okay, reduces the extremism among the citizenry.
but forcing the candidates to provide concrete and elaborate plans might be a start. It gives the citizen a starting place.
Good. So what is the action suggested here that will help us reduce extremism?
To make the politicians make a plan before they
So yeah, exactly. So again, this is something related to the context that you have before. But here they're telling us in this specific sentence is that forcing the candidates. Who are the candidates, as you said, Muhammad?
the politicians.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So when we force that politicians, because here we have candidates, to provide concrete and elaborate plans that could give us a start of to what? To changing that. Remember, it's in the previous sentence. What is that? Because they said all of these psychological forces increase political extremism, and no simple measure will change that. So we would like to change political extremism, and we don't have actually a simple measure to help us change that. But if we force the candidates in this specific situation, we're talking about politicians, if we force them to provide us with solid, strong, and detailed plans, then we will be able to start the change of political extremism. Thank you, Muhammad. So now in these lines, what is the option that matches this idea in question 18? Which option gives us the idea that we've just read? How can we draw a conclusion? So yes, for 18, the answer is B, requiring. And we have, we have the word forcing in the passage. And they are not, identical. They don't have the same exact meaning, but they are similar in that context. Requiring that politicians explain their proposed policies, and policies here, again, is just a synonym for the word plans in the passage, in detail before an election is held, that would reduce political extremism. So just again, be patient, read well, highlight the keywords, make the connections between those ideas, and definitely you will get the right answer. Especially, guys, if you are getting the evidence question right. And I'm really happy about that. Almost when all of the evidence questions, you get them right. And that's something good. The only missing part is how to match those lines in the evidence to one of the options for the previous question or in the previous question. Okay? All right, let's now move to the third passage. And we have the questions 22 to 32. All right, let's see here. So this passage is adapted from rare woodland plant uses cryptic coloration. Why? To hide from predators. Guys, when first of all, changing the color to hide from predators, this aspect is usually found in what? Can you tell me?
Animals.
Good, thank you. And what is it called? What is the term for that?
Camouflage.
Camouflage, thank you. Okay, great. So now they're telling us that there's something interesting, because usually this feature is used by animals, and that helps them to escape or evade their predators. But today we're going to talk about a rare plant. And this plant actually is using the same technique, which is about the cryptic coloration. And it uses this technique to hide from predators. And that's what's interesting in this topic, because usually it's found in animals, but in this passage, we're going to talk about a plant. Let's see here. Again, we have question number 22. Remember, guys, for any general question, whether it's the point of view, whether it's the main purpose, whether it's for the central idea, what you need to do is, first of all, read the blurb, as I did now, highlight the title. You'll understand what's happening. Read the first paragraph. If you follow these 3 steps, inshallah, again, you're going to get the general question. And again, I'm not saying that you can always get the right answer without reading the whole passage, because remember, this is a general question. It requires your understanding of the general idea. But these are 3 steps that, inshallah, will be helpful to you guys. So read the blurb, highlight the keywords, understand what the topic is about, and then read the first paragraph, and that will help you to get something of that. So it's well known that some animal species use camouflage to hide from predators. Individuals that are able to blend to their surroundings and avoid being eaten are able to survive longer, reproduce, and thus increase their fitness, compared to those who stand out more. This may seem like a good strategy and fairly common in the animal kingdom, but who ever heard of a plant doing the same thing? So of course now, guys, well, what do you expect that's going to be discussed in this passage? They will tell us about this plant and how this plant uses this technique. Is it effective or not? And so on. So for question number 22, the best answer that we can have here is, let's see, is it to contrast the activities of plant species that rely on photosynthesis with the activities of those that do not? Explore the attempts of scientists to understand the means by which plants attract pollinators. C, describe a study illuminating a defensive strategy of a particular species of plant, or explain the result of experiments comparing the function of color in plants and in animals. Now again, let's go back to the steps I told you about. We read the blurb, we highlighted the keywords, and we read the first paragraph. What is that defensive strategy? Who can tell me? As we read in the blurb or in the first paragraph?
Camouflage.
Coloration.
Sorry. Yes, it's camouflage. And the technique, as you also mentioned, guys, is the cryptic coloration. And do we have only a specific species of plant that does that?
Yes.
Because the first word in the title that's included in the blurb, what is the word? The first word in the title, who can tell me?
Rare.
Rare, thank you. So now you will see that it's easy to understand what the main purpose of the passage is. And I hope that this technique helps you guys, okay? So remember these 3 steps, always apply them. But again, of course, be patient, read other parts of the passage to make sure that you have a full idea of what the passage is about. Now we can move to question
So 22 is
number
C.
22, yes, the answer is C.
Okay.
23, again, we don't have a big issue here. We were saying that which choice best supports the idea that the ability of a species to use camouflage effectively can provide an evolutionary advantage, right? So here, we said in the same paragraph that we've just read, where's the evolutionary advantage? We were saying that individuals that are able to blend in their surroundings and avoid being eaten are able to survive longer, reproduce, and thus increase their fitness. Aren't these things, guys, advantages in the evolutionary context? Yes. So our evidence is in these lines, and the answer is B. The lines for the evidence are 2 through 7. Now, we can move to question number 26. Again, 26 is followed by evidence, and every single person here got the evidence right. However, for the question itself, which is 26, 5 out of 8 people got it wrong. ضبطوا لنا هالمشكلة يا جماعة. عم تجيبوا evidence right, جيبوا answer correct as well. اوكي ولا انتوا خلاص بنجيب الايفيدنس كوريكت امورنا تمام. So since I said that, then you already know that the right answer for 27 is C, correct? And the answer is in lines 25 to 30. Let's see what question number 26 is about. It says, again, look, did you notice a pattern? What kind of questions, guys, that you are getting wrong so far? And especially when it's related to evidence, who can tell me? What type of question is it?
Inference.
Exactly. It's the inference question, which means you need to remember an inference question asks you to get the answer, not from the passage directly, but based on what you have in the passage. Do not expect an inference question to give you a piece of information that is directly mentioned there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an inference, right? It would be a statement. So it can most reasonably be inferred from the passage that the nutrient requirements of many plants have the consequence of what? So focus on the keywords. What am I asked about? Many plants. What about them? They have specific nutrient requirements. Good. What is the consequence of that? That's what my answer should be. I should know what the consequence of the fact that many plants have nutrient requirements. So let's go to the lines 25 and 30. And let's just please learn how we can get the information together to draw a conclusion. So here's the thing. Because this plant no longer requires, so I found one of the keywords, nutrient requirements. So because this plant, and I'm talking about, look, the question was asking about what? Many plants. That's what the question is about. But the passage is not about many plants. It's about this plant. It's about this, Monotropsis odorata. And that's the main trick. The question is not about this plant. It's about many plants. And in the other way around, the passage is not about many plants, it's about this plant. So let's see. Because this plant no longer requires photosynthetic pigmentation, which is the green coloration, to produce its own energy. Now we understand. Many plants, how do they make their own food? They need the green coloration so that they can use the sunlight and they can get the water from the soil. And then they need, of course, the carbon dioxide. They will put them all together to make food. However, this plant doesn't need green color to produce its own energy. And because of that, look, because of that, what's happening? It's free to adopt a wider range of what? Of possibilities in coloration, just like fungi and animals. Now, remember, do not expect that any of the options A, B, C, or D will give you the exact same information, okay? But now you need to understand something. This plant is different from many other plants in which all those other plants we're talking about, they require the green coloration. Why? To make their own food. This plant simply doesn't. Okay, what is the result? It can have a wider range of in coloration. It doesn't have to be green all the time. It can change its color to whatever it needs. Okay? Now we go to the options. We were talking about this plant in the passage, but the question here is not about the plant. Please focus again. It's about the many other plants. So when they require, so now let me ask you this question first, guys. Who can tell me what are these nutrient requirements of many plants? Come on.
Sunlight and carbon dioxide gas.
What is it, Radwa?
Sunlight and carbon dioxide.
Haram alik ya Radwa, I can't hear you well.
Requirements.
Yeah. So again, I just need 2 words. Please, what are the 2 words that express those nutrient requirements? Radwa, you can type if you want, because unfortunately, as usual, I cannot really understand what you're saying, maybe because of the microphone. But the question is for everybody as well. Yahya, Sana, Naya, Muhammad, Tasneem, come on. What are those nutrient requirements we're talking about?
The sun and carbon
No.
dioxide gas, the requirements.
طيب. It's the green coloration. They need the green coloration to make food. And because of that, they don't have a wide range of possibilities. They can only have the green color, right? What will that lead to is our answer, is our inference, is our conclusion. So so these requirements have the consequence of exaggerating the plant's coloration patterns. This is the opposite. Okay. B, limiting the plant's defensive options. Yes, but how is that? Because they cannot change their green color. And they don't have this mechanism of camouflage because they are unable to change their color. So the answer is B. It is only this plant that we are talking about that has the wider possibilities of coloration, and that's why it can adopt the mechanism of camouflage, which means the many plants that require green coloration cannot change their color, and that will lead to a limited defensive options. They cannot change their color, which means they cannot do camouflage. Does that make sense now? يحيى نعسني ها؟ يحيى صحصح معي.
صح.
Okay.
So the
So
answer is B.
it is B. Does that make sense now or not?
Why can't it be A or C?
Because as I said, A is exactly the opposite. When you exaggerate the coloration patterns, it means you have the possibility to change your colors, but they have only the green color and they cannot change it because they need it for their own food. Without the green color, they cannot make food. C, increase the plant's energy consumption. What does that mean? Because they have green color, they eat or create more food? There's nothing that indicates that.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
So we can choose A if the question was about monotropisms, not many planets, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's why I said A is exactly the opposite. So if we change the question from many plants to this plant, then yes, it works. But remember, that's how they sometimes make the trick in the inference. For example, they give you A, but in the question they give you B, and then you need just to switch from A to B. In the passage, they're talking about a specific plant. In the question, they are talking about the other plants. So what applies to this rare plant is the opposite to what applies to the other plants. Okay, guys. And now we're done with this passage. So now we still have only 2 passages left. We have the 4th and the 5th. Let's have our 10-minute break now. And after 10 minutes, we are going to come back and deal with these 2 passages, inshallah. But please, صحصحوا, drink something, wash your, faces, and come back. Okay, guys, we are back. So are you there? Okay, so please just get ready, open up your cameras, let's get started. Now, actually, the passage where we have some problems is this passage, okay? So let's understand what this passage is about. Now, the passage is Reflections on the Revolution in France. And the writer of this passage is Edmund Burke, who was a British politician and scholar. So we're talking about, of course, the revolution in France. But the person who's talking here is a British politician and scholar. I don't know why this is happening, but okay. Now, in 1789, which is 1 year prior to this passage, the French formed a new governmental body that was known as the National Assembly, ushering, which means guiding, in the tumultuous period, which means the chaotic period of political and social change known as the French Revolution. But again, before I start analyzing the passage, again, guys, please open up your cameras. Yahya, Radwa, Muhammad, Sana. Come on, guys. So what are we talking about? The French Revolution.
Can you repeat what tumultuous mean?
Chaotic.
Okay.
And it was a huge change in France. And they chose, a new governmental body. And this government was called the National Assembly. So let's see how this person views that National Assembly. Now look, to make a government requires no great prudence. And of course, prudence means, what does it mean, prudence? It means wisdom. So he's saying that create a government, you don't have to be wise. Settle the seat of power, teach obedience, and the work is done. Now, to give freedom is still more easy. Why? It's not necessary guide. It only requires to let go the rein. So it's the opposite of the first style. But, and focus here again on but to form a free government, that is to temper together these opposite elements of liberty and restraint in one consistent work. But if you want to have a government that has the two styles, the first one, which is the, you can say dictatorial, and the second, which is the democratic, to put these two styles in one government, okay, requires much thought, deep reflection, a sagacious, powerful, and combining mind. Do you understand what the main idea here is? He's saying it's easy to have a dictatorial government, and it's even easier to have a free government or, a democratic government. But to put both elements that are actually opposite to each other in one government, that's the hard thing. And then what does he say after that? This I do not find in those who take the lead in the National Assembly. The leaders of this assembly do not have this ability to do that. Perhaps they are not so miserably deficient as they appear. Maybe they're not that weak. I rather believe it. I actually believe that they are not that weak. It would put them below the common level of a human understanding if they were. But when the leaders choose to make themselves bidders at an auction of popularity, and that's the most important word here, their talents in the construction of the state will be of no sense. If they all seek, if they all just chase popularity, then they will not be able to lead the country. they will become flatterers instead of legislators. And they will be the instruments, not the guides of the people. Because the government is supposed to guide the people, not to, entertain the people or just seek their love. And then he says, if any of them should happen to propose a scheme of liberty, soberly limited and defined with proper qualifications. What if we have one person who actually did something proper, who came up with a scheme of work that is beneficial to the country? What's going to happen? He says here that he will be immediately outbid by his competitors, who will produce something more popular. The other politicians, the other leaders in the government will just try to come up with something not better, just more popular. Why? To please the people, to please the public. And then he continues with the other things. I believe that here we can get the main idea. He doesn't actually have a point of view that's positive toward those people. And he believes that they are deficient. They're not able to guide the country. And not because they don't have, the proper understanding. It's just because they seek the pleasure and the popularity from the public. That's the main issue here. Now we can go to the questions that we need to discuss. The first one is question number 36. So he says here now, do we have evidence? No, we don't. Okay. Based on the passage, again, when you say based on the passage, that's an inference question. And yet we have a problem with it. So as you can see, when we discuss questions together, now you can understand yourself and see what kind of mistakes you are in what types of questions. And the dominant type until now, as you can all notice, is the inference question. So based on the passage, Burke believes that French leaders who would advocate moderate positions are, and remember, that's just the part that we've read together, okay, for 36. If we go back there, we said here, we can start, for example, in line 18. So we said, if any of them should happen to propose a scheme of liberty, soberly limited and defined with proper qualifications, he will be immediately outbid by his competitors, who will produce something more splendidly popular. That's the answer. That's what's going to happen to him. And then here's the thing. The options can actually trick us because, first of all, we have suspicions. Suspicions will be raised of his fidelity, of his sincerity, honesty to his cause. Moderation will be stigmatized as the virtue of cowards, and compromise as the prudence of traitors, until in hopes of preserving the credit which may enable him to temper and moderate on some occasions, the popular leader is obliged to become active in propagating doctrines and establishing powers that will afterwards defeat any sober purpose at which he ultimately might have aimed. So the main idea that even if we have one of them who's trying to do something proper, his competitors will not allow him. They will do something more popular just to please the public. Now, when we go to the options, so those leaders who would advocate moderate positions are brave, but are likely to be distrusted, cowardly, but they are likely to be praised, virtuous, but are likely to be ignored, sensible, but are likely to be undermined. And again, you can find many synonyms to the words in the different options, but I need the keywords. What did he say? Please focus on that. So the keywords that I should choose from here is, look, we have soberly, we have proper, okay? And what's gonna happen to him? He will be outbid by his competitors because they will come up with something that's more popular, right? These are the keywords that I have here. And of course, we have the other words that he will be suspected of dishonesty, and his moderation will be described as cowardly. He can be actually described as a traitor. But remember, These are the opinions of whom? Of the people around him, of the public. But remember, the question is not saying the people believe, the public believe. No, we're asked about the opinion of Burke, not the public. And that's why even it's, tempting to choose B, cowardly, right? Or even C, virtuous. Remember, guys, first of all, cowardly, that's not the opinion of Burke. Focus on the question. The question asks us about what Burke believes, not what the public believes. That's why B is wrong. C, because we just simply have the word virtue, here they use it as an adjective and they said virtuous. But remember, this is just a play on words. Do not be tricked by the word itself. You need to understand what the context is about. So as we said, the keywords that express actually Burke's opinion, not the public's opinions, are soberly and proper. Okay, so again, it's not about bravery. It's not about cowardness. It's not about virtue. He said that soberly and proper, which means sensible. But what will happen to these people? They will be undermined. And that's when he said they will be outbid by competitors who will produce something more popular. Just now, what can we take note of this question? The note should be focus whose opinion you are asked about. Is it the people or the characters in the passage, or is it the author himself? That's the main distinction here. And that's the trick that they played on when they created these options. And then for question number 37, again, the word sober in line 30. Let's go there. So, as usual, we need to decide the part of speech of the word. So we have sober purpose. So I know that sober is an adjective describing the word purpose. And then I try to connect the word with the other words in the sentence. So if I go back to the beginning of the sentence, we have here that those people, okay, or this popular leader is forced to, is obliged to become active in propagating doctrines and establishing powers that will afterwards defeat any sober purpose at which he ultimately might have aimed. So simply, the purpose is the word that's described by sober. And now you just need to choose one of these words that works with what? Remember, it's purpose. So, sober purpose. What does it mean here? Does it mean grave purpose, rehabilitated, unpretentious, reasonable? What would you say?
D.
D.
It is D. Reasonable purpose. Because rehabilitated, we're talking about a sober person who, for example, stopped drinking, right? And that's why B doesn't work here. And then for a grave, purpose and unpretentious purpose, these don't work in that specific context. It's just because he also used for the same purpose, remember before, the word proper. And if you remember, just for question number 36, how did we describe proper in the meaning? We said sensible. What does it mean sensible? It means reasonable. So also the answers for some questions will help you get the answers of other questions. Since we said soberly and proper means sensible, what is the relationship between sensible and reasonable? They are synonyms. That's another way you can think about it. And the answer for 37 again is D.
Why can't we use A in this context?
Grave purpose, what does that mean? They don't work together. They don't collocate.
Or sub C?
Unpretentious purpose. Again, the same reason. Because It's not just about the word. You cannot just take the word and isolate it from the context. The context was talking about something proper, something sober. When we answered the previous question, we said, depending on these two words, proper means sensible, soberly means sensible. And that's what we chose for D, right? So now you go back and you are asked about the same word, which is sober. So it has to be similar to what we chose before. It doesn't make sense to have the same word and they are used, or the word itself is used very differently, but in the same context. Since it's the same context, it's the same use, and thus it's the same meaning. For 38, we have no problem. And for the 38, the answer is B. Okay. So the British have acted wisely to revise their, rather than replace their political system. And it's said there, as we said in the last paragraph, because he said that the ancestors, right? Here he started mentioning that point. He said that I would make that reparation as nearly as possible in the style of the building, but he would not destroy the whole building. Okay. And that's also, let's just go back here. Okay, so here he said, I would not exclude alternation neither. Alteration, of course, means change. He said, I'm not excluding change. But even when I changed it, it should be to preserve. It should be led to my remedy by agreed grievance. So his point is that do not just destroy the whole building, just fix what's wrong. And of course, by building, he's talking about the Constitution, and of course, he's talking about the government itself. For 39, we're asked about something similar. Here they're telling us that Burke refers to the repair of a building in line 70 through 72 to make the point that what? Okay? So, just in the same way, we talked about 38. If we go to 39, then what he means by that building, again, the building is something that represents or symbolizes the government. And he says, if you felt that in the past the government has something, that should be fixed, then don't go and destroy the whole government. Just change and reform what needs to be fixed. And that's why the answer is D. Changes to a government should maintain the government's essential properties. Don't just go and destroy the whole thing. Make only changes where necessary and maintain the essential parts. Now let's move to question number 40. So in passage 1, Burke displays the greatest respect for which of the following? So, and of course here we have evidence. So for 41, again, what can you guess now? Most of us got the evidence right.
D.
Which is D, 81 to 84. And they're just asking us, he shows the greatest respect for whom? So if we just go to those lines, 81 to 84, let's see here. So we were saying that let's imitate their caution. Of course, we need to ask ourselves what this pronoun there is referring to. If we wish to deserve their fortune or to retain their bequests. So who are they? Who is he talking about? Because he's saying their nature, their caution. Who are they? Who can tell me?
Gentlemen of France.
Actually, look, for the gentlemen of France, he said, not being France or not being illuminated with the light of which the gentlemen of France tell us they have got so abundant a share, they acted under a strong impression of the ignorance and fallibility of mankind. So actually, no, he said that the gentlemen of France are ignorant. So that's the opposite. He wasn't showing them, respect. But if you just keep a little bit more reading, he said, let's add, if we please, but let's preserve what they have left, standing on the firm ground of the British Constitution. Let's be satisfied to admire rather than attempt to follow in their desperate flights the aeronauts of France. So actually he's talking about the British, but which ones? Is it British citizens who are inspired by the French? And the answer should be, of course not, because he's describing the French as ignorant and fallible, which means foolish. Then who is he showing respect towards? It's the British leaders of past generations, because he was telling the gentlemen of France to imitate the people who created the British Constitution. He was telling them to be inspired by them, to admire their work. So actually the respect that he was showing is not for the French, and it's not for the British who are inspired by the French, but it's just about the British leaders of past generations. And he was showing that respect by telling them, go and imitate them, follow them, copy their work, and so on and so forth.
But how do we know that they mean the leaders of past generations?
Because it's mentioned before. It's mentioned before. And remember, yes, the evidence is in these lines, but he started talking about them, way earlier. Because go back to the beginning of the paragraph. What is he saying? He's saying that whatever they are, I wish my countrymen rather to recommend to our neighbors are the example of the British Constitution than to take models from them for the government of our own. So he's saying that actually our people, the British, should not take examples from the French to improve our own government. They should recommend our neighbors. Who are our neighbors? The French. They should recommend to them the example of our British Constitution. In the former, they have got an invaluable treasure. What is the former? It's the British. They are not, I think, without some causes of apprehension and complaints, but these, they do not owe to their constitution, but to their own conduct. And then look, he says, I think our happy situation, owing to whom? To our constitution, but owing to the whole of it and not to any single part. Owing in a great measure to what we have left standing in our several reviews and reformations, as well as to what we have altered or superadded. Our people will find employment enough for a truly patriotic, free and independent spirit. So he's talking about the Constitution. And then what about the British leaders in the past? Look, he said in line 69, in what I did, I should follow the example of our ancestors. I would make the reparation as nearly as possible in the style of the building. So the reference starts in actually line 69 when he said, I should follow the example of our ancestors. And everything else that comes after that, it's referring to them. So who are the ancestors? Of course, it's the British leaders of past generations.
But didn't they say our past ancestors? That's why, isn't it supposed to be the leaders, former government of France?
No, he's British.
Oh, okay.
Didn't we say from the beginning? Look, in the blurb, we said that Edmund Burke was a British politician and scholar.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. All right, perfect, thank you. For the final passage that we have here, actually we have only 2 questions to discuss. And these two questions are, first of all, we have 44. Again, look, ركزوا معي يا جماعة, that's also an inference question. You see, we have a problem with inference. The question here says, first of all, let me just check. Okay, we don't have evidence. All right. Based on passage 1. Again, whenever you see based on, not according to, that's an inference question. Because if it were a statement question, it would start with according to the passage, not based on the passage. So based on passage 1, which hypothetical discovery? So we don't have this discovery, okay? Please focus here. Sometimes the emphasis is just, let's imagine something. And that's exactly what's happening here, because they said which hypothetical, which means which imaginary discovery. Yes, Yahya, would provide the most support for what? For the impact hypothesis. Okay, focus on that, please. Let's go there. Of course, in passage 1, and passage 1 is very short. I'm gonna read it all quickly, and then we're gonna try, okay, what if we discovered something? Which of these discoveries would support this impact theory? So, at the 2007 American Geophysical Union's meeting in Acapulco, Mexico, some 24 scientists presented multiple studies arguing that, and please focus because now they will explain the theory, a comet or asteroid exploded above or on the northern ice cap almost 13,000 years ago, showering debris across the North American continent and causing temperatures to plunge for the next millennium. So what do we have here? We have an asteroid. This asteroid or comet exploded above or on the northern ice cap. And because of that, what happened to the temperatures? Plunged, which means they dropped very dramatically for the next millennium. Now, the team argues that its idea explains multiple observations, not only the climate cooling. And how do you know that plunge means decrease of the temperature? Because we have climate cooling and the disappearance of the Clovis hunters. So these are two issues, okay, that are explained by this theory, the climate cooling and the disappearance of the Clovis hunters. But also we have something else, the near simultaneous extinction of the continent's large mammals. So there's saying this theory of explosion, which is called the impact theory, it explains three things: climate cooling, Clovis hunters, the disappearance of Clovis hunters, and the near simultaneous extinction of the continent's large mammals. Not all will be convinced, of course. Several leading hypotheses explain each of these three events. That means now in the second paragraph, not all people, not all scientists agree on this theory. Why? Because we already have several hypotheses explaining these three events. A change in ocean circulation is generally thought to have brought about the onset of the millennium-long cooling. So for the first issue, which is the climate cooling, we have a theory says that actually it's because of the ocean circulation. Okay? And this climate cooling is called the Younger Dryas. This cooling might have caused the Clovis hunters to disappear. You see, so there are other theories. They said, okay, for the climate cooling, we have the change in the ocean circulation. And because of the cooling, the hunters, the Clovis hunters disappeared. And if they had not previously been killed by disease or hunted to extinction, the big prehistoric beasts may have been doomed by this changing climate. So these are just alternative theories suggesting other events or other explanations for these three events. Now, the new evidence, however, comes in what? It comes in the form of geochemical analysis of sedimentary layers at 25 archaeological sites across North America, 9 of them Clovis. So let's understand this geochemical evidence. They are saying certain features of the layers, say the team, suggests that they contain debris formed by an extraterrestrial impact. They said, okay, you have different theories. How about this evidence? We have certain features of the layers that they contain, okay, debris formed by an extraterrestrial impact. It's not from the Earth. It's something from space, from the outside, from the outer space. These include what? Spherules of glass and carbon, and amounts of the element iridium, said to be too high to have originated on Earth. In addition, the rocks contain black layers of carbonized material, which the team says are the remains of wildfires that swept across the continent after the impact, after the explosion. So they said after the explosion, there were a lot of wildfires and they swept across the continent. We've just explained the whole issue of passage one. Now, remember, please remember, it's an inference question. And if, again, any discovery you choose here, it's hypothetical, which means it didn't happen. And we are just thinking, what if happened, this thing? Which of these things would support the impact hypothesis? Now, to understand the support, we must understand the hypothesis itself. What does it say? It says now, we strongly believe that our hypothesis is correct because of what? Because of the new evidence. What do we have in the new evidence? We have material that doesn't exist on Earth. It has come from the outer space. So what do we discover to support that theory? Who can help me now? No one?
C.
C. What does C say?
Analysis of ice cores suggests that global temperatures started declining approximately 13,000 years before the onset of the Younger Ice.
Okay. So, these ice cores, is this something that is not from Earth? And it comes from the outer space, and that's why I can support my theory that there's an explosion of a comet or from an asteroid?
No.
No, because ice already exists on Earth. We need evidence that is related to materials that are not here on Earth and can be only found in space. And that's why those materials came from the comet or the asteroid that exploded on Earth. So the answer must be D. Why? Because it says, okay, let's imagine that we have discovered high levels of osmium, which is rare on Earth. But where is it common? In asteroids. So that would support the theory that an asteroid exploded and it led to the impact theory. And they said even these high levels of osmium are observed in the geologic record for approximately 13,000 years ago, which is the same thing that the theory says. Because here they said, look, we said that this asteroid exploded almost 13,000 years ago. So the answer is D. Since the comet is something from the outer space, then these materials, for example, the osmium, is rare on Earth, but it's common in asteroids. And since we believe that an asteroid exploded, then of course these materials have come from that specific asteroid that exploded on Earth. Does that make sense now?
Why can't we say it's A?
An asteroid impact crater beneath the northern ice cap contains high levels of iridium and has been dated to well after the start. Okay, here's the thing. The first part is okay. The second part that says, and has been dated to well after the start, it's wrong. Why? Because the theory says that this explosion caused the temperatures to fall down or to decrease, right? Read again, please read the lines 5 to 8. They said that when this comet or asteroid exploded, it showered debris across the North American continent and causing what? Temperatures to plunge. Okay? But here they are saying that this material, this iridium, has been dated after the start of the young dryas. And what's the younger dryas? It's the time of the climate cooling. So it doesn't actually make sense, right? It doesn't support the theory. Actually, it disproves it. Because this, climate cooling is supposed to be after the explosion, right? But here they said that these levels of iridium are dated after the start. But if the iridium comes up from the asteroid, how did we find it after the climate cooling if the cooling itself is a result of the explosion? So we have a problem in the second part, which is, and has been dated to well after the start of the younger dryas. It should be before the start, because there's an explosion, and then we have iridium, osmium, whatever, something that is rare on Earth, and then we have the younger dryas, which is the cooling period. But to have the iridium after the cooling, then it means that it's not the explosion that caused the cooling. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's about the sequence. Remember, look, it's the explosion, the material that came from the explosion, and then the climate cooling. If you choose A, simply you're saying that the climate cooling happened before the explosion. And this would disprove the theory, not support it. For the last question, 52. If Meltzer's findings are accurate, what can most reasonably be inferred about the glass and carbon spherules mentioned in the last paragraph of passage 1? So if you remember, we said that we also have glass and carbon found as what? As here. Let me just go back quickly. They said here that these include these layers that they found. These include spherules of glass and carbon, okay? And amounts of element iridium said to be too high to have originated on Earth. So they said that because of the explosion, we have many different layers, and among them, we have glass and carbon. And if we go to passage 2, of course, they were trying to disprove the theory. And what did they say here? They said, look, the main issue in passage 2 is in line 61, okay, or 62 here. The team argues that when the quality and accuracy of the dating, because remember, the whole argument of passage 2 is based on the date, on the timing, okay? And they said here that the team argues that when the quality and accuracy of the dating, which was based on radiocarbon and other techniques, is examined closely, only 3 of the 29 sites actually fall within the time frame of the younger dryas onset. So, just if we connect these 2 points together, you go to 52, they're saying that if the findings in passage 2 are accurate, which is, timing is not accurate, what can most reasonably be inferred about the glass and carbon spherules mentioned in the last paragraph of passage 1? So what we would say that they could have been formed at a time other than the beginning of younger dryas. Because remember, the argument of passage 2 and why they say that the impact theory is incorrect is all because of the timing. They believe that the date or the dating process, the timing process is inaccurate. And that's why, if that's correct, what about those glass and carbon spherules then? They could have been formed at a time other than the beginning of young dryas, because the whole issue here is about time. And for 52, the best answer is A. That's it. These are the questions that we were supposed to discuss them. And alhamdulillah, we could discuss all the questions that needed discussion. As usual, inshallah, after we do the writing section, we are going to discuss those questions in the writing section, and after that, I'll provide you with the answer key, and I'll provide you with your scores, inshallah. So on Thursday, we are going to move to the writing test, discuss the questions, and then you will receive the answer key and your scores. Okay, guys, have a good day and see you on Thursday, inshallah. Goodbye.